Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about SCL. So today we had the draft for Smogon Champions League, or SCL, which is the most prestigious team tour that has doubles OU in it. It's a Smogon-wide tournament. Has 10 slots on each team, one of which is DOU. So not that many, so it's pretty difficult to get in. Um, and today we had the draft for it. And so we're like 4 or 5 hours removed from the draft, so thought we'd do like a quick power ranking. There will be an actual official power ranking that will be covered on this channel at some point, probably with a stream with more people. Um, but for now, I just thought I'd do my own like PR video with Shister, and we'll just like make it pretty brief here. Just go over our thoughts on the pool, thoughts on the draft, people who got snubbed, and talk shit at the managers. Real, okay. Um, as a brief disclosure, I did get drafted in this tour, so I will not be discussing my own team because I cannot be unbiased in that regard, obviously. So, but we'll be talking about every other team. So to start off, I think we're just going to take a brief look at like the DOU slots on every team before we like rank them. Um, so first off, Studio Gibble, the DOU slots on here. It's basically just Bagel. M Forbes obviously is used to play DOU. However, in all likelihood, he is not playing DOU at all. I don't think he has any interest in actually touching this tier because, honestly, understandable. Um, but it's Bagel. And then Seraphs is also some DOU experience. Managed in DPL, but didn't really like play that much. But Bagel is the main name here, right? Double circuit winner. Um, Played in SCL last year, went I think 2-2. Um, and generally just like very established doubles player. So, Shifter, what are your thoughts on the Gibbles DOU slot?
So Bagel's a very independent DOU player from what I've seen, or at least that's the impression he gives off to me. Always very solid in pretty much every tour he plays in. Hasn't hasn't totally impressed me this year as like being on the very top of the roster, but still a very consistent player. Just not like hard winning a lot of stuff. And then Seraphs has been doing a lot of manager stuff this year, not just with DPL, but also managed a derby team that I ended up being on. Has been an active player. I don't know if this team actually drafted him for DOU because he has every tier listed as played on here. The thing is, Seraphs had a really poor performance in Derby because he was mostly focused on playing in BLT at the time and was really hands off with the format. So I don't really know what Seraph's like state with DOU is right now. So it's hard for me to like put much in Seraph's favor as like being a good support for Bagel because this metagame has continued to develop since Derby was played into a very strange and matchup fishy direction. So if Seraphs hasn't been on top of that, it might just be Bagel on his lonesome on this team, doing most of the work for himself. And honestly, I'd say Bagel on his own is probably going to go like maybe neutral. It'll be interesting to see how this team pans out in this tour on the DOU side of things.
Yeah, it's fair. Um, Generally agree. I think Bagel will do all right. Um, the thing is, there isn't really a support here. I think he'll probably have to like reach out early and see if there's like anyone who didn't get drafted that would be willing to support him here, and then I think that could go a long way. But yeah, I think this is decent. I mean, I feel like if I were like on this team or like this was like my team, I would have like preferred like getting like a DOU like sub or whatever. But I mean, Bagel's pretty reliable. It should be okay, but a little bit surprised we didn't see another like DOU specific player drafted for this team. All right, so Islanders, a few people here, DOU specifically, QSNS, and Zoe, also MDB, but like MDB I think has DOU and tiers not played. He played it before to decent success, but I don't think he'll really be contributing to that slot much, to be honest. I think this is interesting. I mean, QSNS did very, very well in SCL last year, went like 7-1. Um, Obviously, like one of the better like DOU players historically. Um, hasn't really played too much this year. However, like honestly, like that's kind of fair. There was a lot of people that kind of took like a bit of a break between like the time between like last SCL and this one. Um, and so it should be pretty refreshed here, I think. Um, and also Zoe supported an SCL a couple of years ago. I think these two were on the same team. What years ago? Let me see. I think it was like Foxes or something. Um, yeah, it was QSNS that Zoe did team before in a much different metagame. This was back in Gen 8. Um, so obviously they're pretty familiar with each other, or at least they should be. I think this is fair. I mean, I think this is probably one of like the top half of rosters for DOU. What are your thoughts, Sister?
This is a solid pairing that has experience with each other, and QSNS has been performing throughout all of SV at the top of tours. I'd say you're doing a little bit better than like Bagel this year, which is honestly very impressive. You could expect good things out of this team. Just just like the word I would use here is solid. There's not really much else to describe this. This is a solid pairing that you should expect results out of.
I think this is definitely like one of the favorites to have like a really good season. The only person QSNS actually lost to last year was Zern, who went like 9-1 or whatever. So definitely like a high ceiling here. I think they should be poised to do really well. Um, okay, so yeah, I think this is like I'd rate this like slightly higher than the Bagel team, just because like actually have support. And also I think QSNS is a little bit more of an established team tour player than Bagel. Bagel has always done like Bagel has never done bad in the team tour, and I don't really expect him to. But QSNS has put up like more elite records in some of these tours than I think Bagel has. Um, okay, Zern on the platoon. This is like no support with an asterisk because one of the managers here is Lunar, who Zern teamed with last year. Um, and so basically, in effect, they got Lunar for like free, basically as support. Um, these two went 9-1 last year. I think this is like I'd say this is one of the favorites to like have the best record. Uh, Obviously, because they did last year. They definitely have shown they have the capability to do so. Um, the pool is like a little bit stronger this year. And I don't think Zern has like seriously try-harded like SV in a while. But definitely like
Yeah.
um, a competent pairing that I expect. I think this is going to be like either like the this might be my number one ranked team here. Not sure. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I I think was like I pulled up the record sheet for DOU, and Zern this year is like nowhere near as active as some of the other players that are on this lineup. Bagels obviously got the most sets played by far this year. Zern's got like a good positive record this year, just hasn't been as active, and Lunar is like semi-retired. So this one's a little bit of a question mark for me because, like, historically, yes, these two should be very well suited to do well with each other in a similar vein to QSNS and Zoe. It's just a question to me of like how motivated and like how up to date are they with the metagame, because the metagame is still very active right now, and there are some very hungry players in this pool on that metagame side of things.
Yeah, it's definitely like a different metagame than last year. Obviously, we had like a whole new like DLC. But to be honest, I think like I don't think that should be too big of an issue for these guys. Like last year's SCL was like honestly kind of interesting because it was like a completely new metagame. Uh, like SCL spanned the entirety of DLC one. Um, was like the only big tour during that time, except for like Doubles World Cup or whatever. Um, it was like the thing, um, and DLC one didn't have anything else. So it was like all from scratch last year, is what I'm saying. And now there's like actually like a little bit of like stuff to work with. Um, so we'll have to see like was that result last year a product of just having like really good calls for the time? Um, I think like yes and no, right? Obviously, there's some of that, but Zern showed like very excellent play, like regardless. And I think he should be able to like pull off like one of like the better records in this tour. We'll obviously have to see. Um, but they got like here it's nice because like you get the free support from Lunar and Lunar is like I think Lunar was like also support when Nails went 9-1. So like the last two SCLs, Lunar is like 18-2 as support,
Okay,
which
yeah,
is like absurd. Um,
that is pretty ridiculous.
okay, so tears. This one is a little bit, I think, a little bit more questionable. Not because of like the player quality, but just the fact of like the specific combination of the two players. We have Sempra and XQ. Um, Sempra
I
got
think the team name is very fitting here, to be honest.
Sempra got second in OSDT this year. Also played in SCO last year. He only played like one game. Um, and obviously like a top VGC player. He got like fifth at Worlds like a year ago, I guess. Yeah, it was a year ago. And then XQ, like a DOU main who's done very well. Still like a very young player. Played in SCO last year, but since then has done better in team tours than he had at the time. So he's definitely improved since last year. This is the two very competent players. My only like question here is like, um, how well do they know each other? How well can they like work with each other? Um, because on the surface it seems like a little bit random. But I think they could definitely like if they like work well together, they could put up good records because both of these players are good pilots. I think like Sepra's probably the one that's going to be starting. What are your thoughts, Chester?
When I look at these two, I really look at XQ, and I remember that XQ is one of the most unique builders in the format. I feel inclined to use the word volatile at times. I'm looking at them on the DOU record sheet right now. They're a decent ways down, but they're both still very positive, around 60% set win rate this year. They're both good players, but unlike some of the others that we've already mentioned here, I don't think they have any experience working with each other. And I honestly don't know if I would like combine their two types of styles, at least from an outsider perspective.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I I made the joke that the team name is fitting, but honestly, XQ is one of the scarier players for me, and these two are completely uncharted territory as far as like being teammates in my eyes.
Yeah, fair. Um,
I would use the word volatile with this slot. It could go incredibly positive, or it could just kind of go kaput if things don't work out.
yeah, that's kind of fair. I agree with that assessment. Like, my question is just like where the team's coming from. Like, if um, because if Semper's using XQ teams, oh my god, that's gonna be like so scary for like anyone who's like played against it to really prep for. Um, yeah, we'll just have to see. I think this is like I'd probably put this in the bottom half just based on like not
Uncertainty.
yeah. But I definitely think this like obviously all the pairings here could do well, but I think this one actually has like a really high upside. It's just like the low side is kind of low because neither of them did very well in SCL last year. And although both have like gotten better at DOU since then, it's still a little bit of a question mark whether they can work together or whatever. All right, so skipping my team, moving on to Fox's. So this one is really funny because it's ESM um, and
Oh boy,
well,
were people upset about these two?
uh, the
Not
combined
underpay
price
of the year?
the combined price for these two combined was 6K. They both went through 3K, which is just absurd. ESM like has been like completely absurd in like the last like several like DOU team tours. Definitely like one of the scariest players to be playing against right now. Um, and
ESM
and he went through
in SB?
3K after like
Like, hold
apparently
on.
people didn't realize he was knobbed or whatever. And so he went for like dirt cheap, and then like Anne also went for like cheaper than they probably should have like been, um, because Anne did well on SCL last year, just like a very competent DOU player. Um, but I think this is a really scary slot. I think this is up there with Zern and Lunar for me. Like this is I think they get the very top, I'd say. Because like
ESM has an 80% win rate in the format this year
yeah,
in team tours. In team tours, he has an 80% win rate.
which is just crazy.
He it is the highest win rate of anybody in the format, and Anne is a top 10 player this year as well. Anne is consistently innovating the metagame and providing teams that everybody uses either in test games or in the games themselves. Like, Anne has an incredible hold in the metagame, and ESM is probably the most unique and dangerous builder in the entire format. He will bring things that nobody else will dare to bring, and with a test builder as good as Anne mesh well together, they will be unstoppable in this pool. That the only way I can justify not putting them top when we get to the rankings is if we determine there's a risk of them not pairing well together, because I don't think these two have been in a team tour together.
Yeah, if they have, it was before my time. Um, I definitely think like that there shouldn't be too much like friction here. The time zones are not like that far apart, which is definitely something that is like kind of a real limitation if like um, I'm trying to communicate with someone like all the way across the world type of thing. Mhm. But I think yeah, this is very very dangerous. I mean, ESM is just like they've been the best DOU player this year, I'd say, and like it hasn't really even been close. Um, So to see him go for 3K
Like,
was just like kind of crazy. The only question here is like we haven't really seen ESM play against like a lot of like the top like DOU players because they haven't really been as active in the time he's been like playing. Um, but I think he, without a doubt, he will go toe to toe with them, um, and like be a very threatening player. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of a fair assessment. Okay, so dominoes. Now this one's interesting. So the first player they bought for DOU was King of Mars. So King of Mars. Is a VGC player, named of Gavin Michaels. One of the best VGC players in the world. I think he won like a like an international at some point, and probably like multiple regionals. I don't entirely know off the top of my head, um, but he's like a very excellent historic like VGC player. Like he hasn't played VGC in like a year because he got banned for Jenning or something. Um, but like very very scary player. He did actually play DOU in the past, but it was like a long time ago. It was like 2015 or something. Um, so definitely an interesting pick. Not someone I think a lot of us really expected to like sign up, but he signed up like very late. And I think here it's interesting because um, for support we have Grandma's Cooking, who is a pretty good like uh, supporter. I think for this because also like someone who's like played a lot of VGC in the past, but has more familiarity with DOU. So like I think this is like pretty close to an ideal support for someone who's coming from a VGC background, right? Um, which I think is cool. Um, I don't know if they like actually like know each other or whatever. It wouldn't really surprise me if they've had like some contact before. Um, but I don't know. This could be interesting, right? Because obviously like Gavin's like an incredible like player. And I honestly like expect him to do like really well, but like he also hasn't really played the format, so it can kind of be like a little bit hit or miss. When you don't have like experience, like obviously um Joe UX9 played in like SCL a couple years ago and did not do well at all. But he's like kind of like the odd one out in that regard because a lot of like VGC players have pretty easily transitioned over and gotten like great results. So we'll have to see how this goes. What are your thoughts?
mm, I I have no doubts that Gavin Michaels is a good player. My question for this slot really is, can Gma help him bridge the gap in this format? Because Gma's has had an interesting year, has been pretty positive in old gens, but I go to his record and Gma unfortunately went 1-6 in DPL. PLX. It's, it's going to be hard for me to see if these two like figure it out because there's been a couple of VGC cores that have happened in DOU team tours this year that have gotten really exploited in SV. Like we have a player in the pool who didn't get drafted. His name is To. To has been great in VGC this year and has been pretty solid in DOU. To is an example of a player that sometimes like I'm in a team tour and we say we're gonna matchup fish him because he's a VGC player and we're gonna bring something that he's never seen before. And this has happened to a couple of the VGC centric DOU cores that I've seen in team tours this year. So my big question for this slot is: can Gma help Gavin be up to date with DOU, and will they be like familiar enough with everything going on to not get like matchup fish in this format? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are into some matchups, you can just lose on load in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Um, I agree with that. I think, yeah, it's a little bit volatile. I think it's like a little bit less volatile than like um Emperor XQ just because like I think we're not going to be seeing any too crazy teams here. I think Gma has had like a pretty good like record in like SB specifically this year. You mentioned like the 1-6 in DPL. I'm pretty sure that was like entirely like various old gens. Um, and just kind of just had like an unlucky tour. I'm not really going to put too much stock in that, but they did top cut OSTT this year.
Yeah, 7-2 and
And
OSTT.
yeah, I think this should be okay. It's kind of a question of just how well Gavin adjusts to the format. But I think the fact that he played DOU like a long time ago is a good sign, right? Because like obviously it's been a very long time, but um, if you're not,
People
just I feel like
forget
just having
yourself.
like the experience of having played like a 6v6 doubles format before is kind of nice because like you're not gonna get like completely there's not gonna be like no surprises there, right? And the two formats are not that different anyways. So like between like BGC and like RegF or whatever, like RegF and like DOU, it's like there's some big differences like Flutter or Shifu, but like it's fundamentally still the same game. Um, okay, so Shoguns. Now this team picked
Uh,
Frixel and Dakaru. Frixel OSDT winner, one of the best like prep gods in this tier, to be honest. I'm pretty sure he said he wanted to support, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Akaru starting, especially as like Akaru has like played in SCL before, has like experience in these like kind of games. I think this is a really high upside, right? With Akaru piloting like teams built by Frixel. Um, I'm excited to see how this team does. I think that this could be really interesting. Um, as long as they
so
make
we
sure they put
were
Akaru in, I feel like because I think Akaru is more willing to start. We'll see how that goes.
so when we were watching a draft happen, we saw Frixel go pretty early. Like Lex and Wonder got a lot of drafts off early, and they picked Frixel in like the first third of the draft. And we kept on wondering who they could possibly pair with Frixel, and we landed on Akaru as probably the best option because Akaru is very, very willing to load matchup fish teams, and Frixel is probably the best matchup fish builder in the format. Frixel will prep into you, and you will lose on Loden, as well as his teams just being solid overall. So these two are like these two are made for each other. They have experience working with each other in DPL. I was on both of their team in Ducks, where they got on pretty well, so they have experience with each other, and they're playing the format to all exploits. So no matter what happens, I expect them to do well. I could even expect them to have the best record in the entire format if they get their matchup fishes right, which knowing Frixel is a very high chance that he does.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this is a very high upside team. I don't think I'll rank them like quite as highly. Um, I think I'll rank him like fourth or something. That's just my gut here. All right, moving on. Circuit
I
breaker.
will
So
say
this
this
is
about
this
Haru.
seems a little bit
I'll say
tradition.
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, Akaru actually has the second highest set win percentage in DOU this year after ESM at 79%.
That's actually interesting. I didn't know that.
So he hasn't played as much as some of the other people on the sheet, but he does have the second highest set win percentage.
Yeah, he's actually done really well this year. Damn, not realized. Not familiar with his game. um, yeah, I think this is a very excellent pairing. I would I think this is going to go pretty far. Um, it's just the fact like if this core was like last year, I feel like it would have been like really really powerful. I think the power level of this SCL is like a little bit higher, um, because we got someone like
Oh
Sporific back playing DOU. Who last played SCL in like 2022, I think. Check his record there. He did pretty well last that time. Yeah, he went 6-5 in like a pretty tough pool at the time. Um, and he is paired with no one because the managers are Z and Zom. I think this is pretty much going to be like Spurific and Z doing like the prep here for DOU. And I expect this slot to do well. The only question is it's been a while since Spurific like actively played DOU, and I don't think he's like specifically played SV DOU. However, he's a player I rate really really highly. He's had an excellent season in VGC, especially in like Reg G. Um, so I think this is a very dangerous combination because I mean they're also friends, so I think that like you're not going to have an issue with like that. Um, I think hmm, it's just going to be a question of like how well he takes to the format because like um, I definitely think like he has the potential to like do really well. Um, so we'll have to see. What are your
yeah.
thoughts, Shister?
Z as when I see Z load into tournament sets this year, I noticed the teams are really really solid. I think Z is gonna really get Spurific acquainted with the format very easily, especially with them being friends. I have no doubts in my mind that Spurific can hang with the best of the players in this pool in terms of gameplay. It will come down to A, does he take to the tier well because the tier is in a kind of an awkward offensive mess state right now. And B, do they not get matchup fished? Because oh boy, I have seen some matchup fishes happen with Z this year. They've not been pretty, both in terms of luck and actual teams.
Understandable. Z has also had like a very excellent year. Now I'm like looking at the sheet. Um,
Oh yeah, he's been doing absolutely fantastic. I would honestly, the only thing that keeps me from like having these two as like top three in my head is the fact that Spurific hasn't been active throughout the year.
yeah,
That's like the one little bit of uncertainty that could unseat this team as being a top contender.
yeah. And I will say I don't think he's like been like paying like zero attention to DOU. Like he did play in Derby. So I don't. It's not like he's like a complete stranger to the format. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like heard a fair amount about it too. Um, but yeah, he hasn't like actually like played it in a while. I think he'll do fine. Um, we'll have to see. I think like this is like probably like I don't know. Let's see. Okay, Spartans. So this is JRL Tenzai. JRL one of the greats really. He has not really played like a whole lot since he won like doubles ladder tournament earlier this year. Um, he's been like a little bit inactive. Tenzai has also like not played a whole lot. So this is like interesting, right? Because I think this is like you have like a good like teammate synergy here. I'm pretty sure these two are friends, and it's I think hmm, it's a question of like what
JRL
JRL are we going to see? Are we going to see like 2022 JRL? Or are we going to see like 2024 JRL? Or like how motivated is he going to be? Because JRL is like one of the best doubles players of all time. And there's not really like a question about that. It's just like he hasn't been quite as good in SV as he like was in some of like in like Gen 8. in Gen 8 he was like a completely like threatening player. Like I don't think he's reached quite that height in Gen 9. Um, and Tenzai also has not like he has Tenzai also hasn't been as like excellent in Gen 9 as he has been uh in the like Gen 8 or some of the older gens as well. But I think this is definitely like very high potential. I think I probably am gonna unfortunately have to like rate them like in the bottom half only because like someone has to go down there, right? Type of thing. Um,
Oh yeah.
because really every team here is like pretty excellent, but it's like I don't know. It's just a tough pool, and I'm not sure how like motivated JRL is to play SB. Um, but again, it is JRL, and I would not be surprised if he just locks in and puts up a good record. But he's had like I'd say like pretty average records across like the last couple of SCLs. He went 4-5
He's
and then 6-7, which is honestly like that's not bad records because like it's SCL, right? And if you're like going about 500 as your double slot, especially like this year, he's not like that expensive. That can definitely like, get your team value. Um, but I think yeah, it's not. We'll just have to see like how motivated he is to play
uh,
the format. So,
I'll put it like this: JRL is the only player in the DOU pool in this SCL who is not positive this year on the DOU record sheet, and I would still start JRL over Tenzai right now. Like these two have the history to be great. It's just been a matter of seeing if they're motivated enough to actually like put in the work for SV.
mhm, it's fair.
Tendai also hasn't played that many games this year. JRL's played a little bit, mostly towards the front half of the year. Completely skipped Derby.
Tenzai
No
had like a
idea
really good
where.
DPL since last year. We're not going to talk about Tenzai's record last year. Um, yeah, I mean, like, look at I only pulled up 2023 just to like point out. Like, I mean, Gerald was like number one last year. He's an excellent player. Um, I just think like in terms of like current activity, it's like not quite at the same level as like the others. All right, so now that we've like gone through the list, let's like try to like put together like um a ranking here. Let's see. Where do I want to type this out?
Hmm.
There's a sandbox somewhere. Yeah, sandbox. Okay. Um,
Oh my goodness. Do we want to start from the top or the bottom?
we'll start from the bottom. I think that's gonna be easier. I mean, we're not gonna get. I don't think we're gonna get it like exactly right the first time. Um, all right.
So I would say that my clear bottom three are Dynamos, Terrors, and Spartans. Not sure on the order yet. I think those are the three teams that we casted the most doubt on.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think like the peak for like JRL plus Tenzai is like as high as like some of the other teams, but I don't think I could put them at the bottom because JRL has never had like a bad score like this in like a very long time at the very least. So I think he'll go like pretty close to 500 ish. I just don't think he's gonna get like a X2 type of season or whatever. Um, so that brings it between Dynamos and Terrors. And honestly, I'd say Gibble, Studio Gibble, just because Bagel doesn't have any support, and that can be kind of dire, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I brought this up before we started the video, but I really do think that one of the most important things in DOU right now is who you test with, because oh my goodness, there are so many different matchups that you need to make sure your team isn't completely lost into, and there's no way to see that just by looking in the builder. You have to actually play in with a good player. Not having that support slot that you can be confident in, because I am truly am not that confident in Seraph. I don't even know if he's going to actually be supporting Bagel, is very concerning for that slot. Bagel might have to rely on outside support, and that is not great.
Yeah. I think for me it's between Tears and Gibble, just but I think like mm, yeah, I'm gonna put I'll put Tears at the bottom just because like I think like it's just a little like too volatile, I think. Because I think like
They have a huge time zone diff too.
yeah, the time zone difference is like 8 hours. And that can make it hard to communicate and I don't know like how well they know each other or whatever. I definitely think like obviously the caveat here is that every single slot here could do well. Um, it's actually like pretty hard to like put one team at the bottom because I think it's all like really really close and this could be completely wrong. Um, and it's going to be like funnier. The funnier it's going to be is like the more wrong I am, you know. Um,
It's going to be
and then
very
I think
funny when XQ gives us a sad face in Discord for putting his team at the bottom.
sad. Um, mm,
You did say it was between Terrors and Gibble, so do you put Gibble in eighth?
yeah, I will. I think it's like a little like disrespect. I feel like it's like a little disrespectful to Bagel, but like it's not because of him. It's because of the fact he doesn't have like a dedicated support type of thing. Um, like I think like if Bagel literally had just like any like dedicated DOU support, he'd be like at least fifth or sixth at the very least. But like, come on, guys, we're drafting for SCL and we didn't draft a dedicated DOU support. Like, what are we doing here? Like, come on, like you can't be serious. Um, okay, and then I think it like seventh, I'll put Spartan. Um, I think this slot has like a lot of experience in these tours, and that's why I can't like put them any lower than this, right? Um, even
They're,
given the
they're
fact
good.
there hasn't been a whole lot of activity, but the experience here is like very, very large. I think that's one of like the biggest factors, and I think that it's definitely here. Um,
I think we have
you
to
think this
put
is
Dynamos
reasonable?
next. Yeah, yeah, I think it's reasonable. It's just a matter of activity. I don't think we can, in good faith, put Dynamos anything other than six at this point, though. I
Yeah,
think there's too
I
much
think six
uncertainty
is
there.
fine. Um, and this is like getting into the slots I think could be like really competitive. Um, but it's like it's just a question of like how well someone who hasn't played the tier in like 10 years picks up the tier. And like it's just it has potential to not go great, but I think it also could go very well. So we'll have to see. Um, and then here's where it gets interesting, right? So we have the top five teams. So now we're talking about QSNS, Zern, um, QSNS, Zern, ESM, Akaru plus Frixel, and then Sporific. So what would you lean here?
For the next lowest,
Yeah,
so I think I'm gonna preface this by saying I again think that the support slots are probably the deciding factor here for now, just because of how important it is to actually test teams in the SVDOU right now with the extreme volatility in that game. I'm kind of leaning towards QSNX next on the list because I genuinely don't know how much Zoe plays the metagame. I haven't seen them be all that active with like playing the metagame. They've obviously been around the community a lot. They have, at least have a good idea of what's going on, but I just don't know if I've seen all that. Plus, I don't think QSNS has had like the greatest year. Like QSNS hasn't been like super active. He's still like active and still winning tours, obviously, but he's not like on ESM level. He's not played nearly as much as Bagel. He's lower than Akaru on the list right now, and
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, they haven't really played in like a too actively in a while. Um, I think for me here it's like it's between like Akaru, Frixel, and QSNS though, because like I feel like Shoguns could either do really well or they could be like kind of like in the middle. Just because like every other team is like a bit more experienced, I'd say. Um, mm,
yeah. I just think that Akaru and Frixel are really dedicated in the tier right now, as opposed to we have a lot
yeah,
less
that's fair.
activity
That's
to
fair.
work with here with Zoe and QS.
That's fair. I think I'll put Shoguns at 4 because I don't think I want to rank them above. Hmm. Uh,
Mm.
I can't put the person who went 7-1 last year in SCL at fifth. I can't do that. No, we're not doing that. I have to move I have to move this a little bit because I do think like Akaru
That's
plus Frixel
entirely
could do
fair.
like really well, but I also think like QSNS has just had like better records all time than Akaru in tours like this. Um, and has like a little bit of like a higher ceiling. Like granted, like activity, I think this is like the top five are all like really really close. But I can't put someone who went like 7-1 last year at fifth. I don't think that's right. Just objectively. Um, so- because the question here comes down to like now I think it's between like Sporific and then QSNS.
Yeah.
Or no, Sporific, but Sporific and yeah, Sporific and QSNS. I think because it's like neither like team has most like recent SV like stuff going on.
Sporific does have Z, and Z very nearly won the recent seasonal, got to finals in that. So Z is still very much on top of the metagame.
Yeah, but like I
So
talked to like
we
Z like
we
3 days ago, and they said like they've built like two teams in SV in the last year.
ooh,
Hmm.
ooh,
Let's
we got insider info that might decide this one.
I think okay. I think that these are like very close. I'm gonna put Sporific and Z here because again,
Yeah.
I think I just need. I'm rating like the record from last year like pretty highly, right?
I think
Um,
I think there's too much uncertainty with Sporific's ability to acclimate to the metagame too.
yeah, that's fair.
Not that much uncertainty. Obviously, we know Sporific is a fantastic player, but
And I mean,
it is
I don't,
still
because he
jumping
has
back
been
into
like
it
pretty
here after a
active
while.
in terms of like paying attention to the metagame and has like played very, very well. Clearly has a good understanding of the metagame. It's just like I don't know specifically how much they're going to end up like this combination is going to end up like liking this metagame in particular once like more time is like dedicated to it. Um, and I obviously don't know that about QSS and Zoe either, but like um, I do think like that 7-1 record is like very, very like I mean, yeah, I think 3 is like the lowest I can put that because like that was like a really impressive run last year, and the pool is like very very similar. So I don't have any doubts that like it could be they could run that back, right? Um,
Right.
especially because QSNS did that last year with Sempra's support, and Sempra at the time had like played very very minimal amounts of DOU, whereas like Zoe like maybe has like not played the most like recently in SV, but is still like someone who's like been around the whole time. Um, this is not to say that Semper would have been like a bad support last year because I'm sure he did like pretty well because he's a good Mons player. But I think like Zoe now is like more experienced with DOU than Semper did like then type of thing. And so I have no doubts that QSNS would be able to like put up a similarly great record this year. Um, however, I think at two I'm gonna have to put ESM and Ann. Um, this ranking is pretty
I'm
high
gonna have to
considering like
disagree.
neither player has like the specific um like SCL experience. I think like ESM like has had like such good records that I think it's justified, and then Ann has done very well as well. Um, but I think I would be psychotic to put anyone other than Platoon at one after like literally the same duo going 9-1 last year into a very similar field. Um, like a little bit of like a weaker field last year, but like the field is like now that I'm looking at it, it's like 80% the same. Um, I think it's just the fact that Zern has more experience in like tours like in like FPL than ESM or An. But I'm putting ESM and An like really high considering like between the two of them they have like 5 games ever in SCL. Um, I think ESM is going to do really well because he's like
It,
been very very dominant.
him going for him going for 3K is like such a good thing for him because he's going to feel so much less pressure as not being like one of the expensive players on his team. Like he's told us about this effect that it has on him. Like I expect him to do fantastic in this tour because of that. On top of just being the GOAT this year.
Yeah, I just think that he's going to be playing against like really good players, and I still think he's going to do very well. Um, but I don't think he'll. I don't. I'm not sure he's going to be able to put up quite as good records as he has in those other tours because they've just been like really excellent. Um, but I have no doubts he's going to do well.
Team that dominated last year, being in first is very justifiable. I don't think we can really disagree on this. Zern still has a very solid record in SV this year.
Yeah, I'm I'm
Still,
I'm putting this because like I kind of realized like a little bit through this list that I wanted to put like a little bit higher emphasis on like past records in SEL, right? Um, and not just like Zern doing well last year, but Lunar has just been such a great like support option. Even as like a manager this year, like I'm sure the majority of his time is probably going to be devoted to DOU because that's the metagame he's most familiar with. Um, and I have no doubt in my mind that these two are going to go like strongly positive because they just did so well last year, and then Lunar has like it wasn't even just last year for Lunar. Like Lunar supported like I'm pretty sure like a really good run in SCL too. Um, let's see.
I guess the only thing that really gives me any sort of pause with this duo is just Lunar claiming to be like semi-retired this
Yeah,
year.
but like Lunar said that last year.
Yeah, I don't really know how to
It's
explain
it's
that
kind it's
one.
kind of it's like a little bit of trolling if we're being real. Um, but yeah, this is gonna be my ranking. I definitely could be like way off on some of these slots because it doesn't really feel good putting like either like Sempra or XQ or like Bagel down here. Although Bagel's just down here because of lack of support. Um, but I think like obviously I have to put some people down here, so I think this is reasonable. Um, teams to look out for, I feel like are the newer players, right? Like ESM, how is he going to do? I think he's going to do very well considering his track record and just like being a great player. But it is his first time, so we'll see how that goes. And then obviously like King of Mars, Gavin Michaels, definitely a big upside here, but like not much recent experience. And then Akaru Frixel because Frixel is done so well this year. Has built really great teams into like a lot of different players, and I think he's up there with Lunar as the most like dangerous like supporting piece here, right? In terms of like ability to like provide excellent teams. And then Akaru is like obviously a great pilot, and I think they'll work very well together. Um, so those three teams are the ones I keep an eye on. Foxes, Shoguns, and Dynamos for definitely like potential to be like very very scary this year. But yeah, I think that's going to be mostly it from us. Any final thought? Oh, let's go over like the snubs because like we're going to be covering this tour a
Oh
lot,
yeah,
and like this is the point to mention the people that should have been picked but didn't get picked. Let's see if the roster is still up on Spawn Tours. Let's see.
we very clearly are going to have some people that we would think should have been paired with Bagel. Like
Yeah, for
there's a
sure.
free slot right there. And given that most of the DOU players in this draft went for like 3 to 4K anyways, I think the biggest one on this list is Rat Packer.
Yeah, Rapid was definitely a snub. One of like the best like team builders in DOU for like the last like 2 years, really. Um, did not sign up last year, and honestly, like I feel like if he'd signed up last year and gotten his like name on like the board a little bit this year, he would have been better placed this year. Honestly, I think Rat Packer was just held back by the fact that like he didn't really play too much this year, aside from like an excellent OSTT run, but he didn't like play in DPL, I don't think. Um, and he didn't play in
Uh,
Derby.
he played on
Um,
Cold Crew in DPL.
oh, did he?
Yeah, he went 4-4. He's
What tier did
actually he's actually he's actually quite positive this year.
he even play in DPL?
I don't
Was it SV?
remember.
Let's see. I completely forgot that.
Did we have DUU in DPL? Because I think it was that.
Oh, okay, yeah. He played the shit ass metagame. Okay, yeah. This is a huge snub, to be perfectly honest. Like, Rat Packer is like one of those players that I think is might just be like the most elite team builder, to be honest with you. At least in terms of like across all tours, right? Because like someone like Lunar
I
is like
would put him up with Quixel as a
has done
support
it in like
piece.
SCL,
Like,
but Lunar is not like super active in a lot of the other tiers, but like or tours. But like Rat Packer, like every tour, every team tour is like the driving force behind his like teams, like the teams that his team is bringing in, right? Um, and I think not pairing him with like Bagel is like a huge mistake for this Gibble team because like you needed a DOU slot. It was right there. You could have gotten him for like 3K, and I would not have. I would have put like Bagel like third on the PR, but instead I had to put
oh
him
yeah,
eighth because you guys didn't give him any support. Like, what are we doing here? Like, come on now. Like, it was right there, and you chose drifting, bro. Like, the meme material is not worth that much. Let's be honest. Um, JK, I'm not trying to be toxic here, but this is like a terrible like snub. Like he this there were a couple of these, right? Um, also what comes to mind is like Tio. Hasn't had like specifically like DOU great results, but he's had like pretty good results. And I think to be honest, like if you drafted him in a tour like this, one where like it actually like matters a lot, I feel like he would have like really put in a lot of effort. And he's an excellent BGC player. And I have no doubt in my mind if you drafted him for this tour, he would have like put in a lot of effort. And he would have done well. Um,
if if you had given me a VGC main to put as a starter in this tour, Tio would understand why he was picked over it, but I could also very well see Tio in that slot on Dynamos, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, me too. Um, Definitely someone I feel like should have been picked. I mean, I guess I kind of get it because like I'm not sure how much value he would have like provided you as like a support. Um, but it's still someone who's like definitely I feel like should have been picked. Also snubbed Fran. Historically pretty good like player in like tours like these, but hadn't like really like played SB in a while. So again, I like kind of get it. But at the same time, probably someone that should have been picked up. I think here it's like JRL and Fran had teamed last year, but instead for support this year, JRL got Tenzai. As Tenzai didn't get his own team this year. Um, So that kind of was to the detriment of Fran. Fran definitely could have been a pick. Um, there's a couple others here. Let's see.
Uh,
Raph.
yeah, I think Raph and Luisan are like two of the other ones that
Oh
could have
yeah,
been
Luisan is
picked.
like, come on. Luisan definitely should have been picked. The unfortunate thing is I'm not really sure how much like name recognition he has outside of like a few communities. But is definitely like I'd say on the level of like a good like half the starters to be honest with you. And someone I really look up to as a player in particular. Um, so yeah, that's actually like a real big shame. Next year, like
Yeah,
we gotta make sure he gets drafted if he's like still around playing a lot of DOU because like that's pretty like inexcusable. I think. Um, yeah, I think those are like the
yeah.
biggest ones. Raph as well, like played in SCL
Raph has
last year.
had a pretty. He's had a solid year, a very solid year, positive on the sheet. Uh, went even in DPL. Had a good OSTT run. Went 7-2 there. He's been playing very solid this year, but yeah, the format, like no problem at all. Absolutely destroyed me in Swiss a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, skill issue. Do better. A couple others. My goat Chris numbers.
I think we got the biggest ones.
Yeah. Packer was the biggest one. I'm really disappointed that we don't get to see him in this tour because I was like really because he doesn't really sign up for like everything, so it's like it was a big deal to me when he signed up. So I'm like kind of bummed that he's not going to be picked. I'm sure he's probably going to be helping like a team because I think he helped JRL last year. Um, so we'll see
I
what
mean,
happens with that. Um,
who knows? Maybe he gets onto Gibble for free because they really need another support there.
yeah,
Ugh.
and definitely the point in the season where people are going to be reaching out to like undrafted players. Um, Also, someone that could have been drafted, Dad won. He played in like
Oh yeah.
I think he played in an official like a couple years, like a few years back, and had like a really strong run in OSGT this year. Like really like clearly understood the format, um, and he's also put up like good records across the board in DOU historically. So I'm like again a little bit bummed, but I'm not like super surprised because he hasn't like been like overall he hasn't been super active in SV. Um,
Hasn't had the greatest year. Had a very unfortunate record in DPL on the Spindas at 3-6.
BW moment. Big tour, big
BW
year.
moment.
All right. Anyways, that's enough like
Make
yapping. I think that's mostly it. Thank you for watching. We'll have like an actual like PR stream in a couple of weeks, maybe like a week after like it comes out. I don't know how long it's gonna take, but yeah. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.